It's Monday, September 2nd, 2013. I'm Jimmy Principe.
I'm Sydney Foster.
And I'm Trey Comstock. Put in your final orders because this is Tech's Last Call, episode 39. Your last call for Tech News of the Week. Tonight, Jimmy goes RTM for BBM. Sydney reads a dictionary entry for twerking. And I appreciate Nintendo's use of fewer Ds. We start tonight with tech companies making it hard for the NSA.
Aww.
We've been talking a lot about government surveillance over the summer, and an opinion piece by Patrick Gray over at Wired.com points out something very important. It's almost trivial for tech companies to make NSA spying next to impossible. By using secure connections via things like SSL, as Facebook announced they were doing this week for all of their traffic, tech companies would be able to get around NSA efforts such as XKeySource to collect unencrypted data. With encrypted data, for the most part, the NSA would need an actual backdoor into the system. Currently, there are no laws demanding such a backdoor, and in the wake of Snowden, Obama has backed down from pushing such a requirement. Gray points out that there are legitimate reasons for law enforcement to have access to this information. So, with that, do you think there should be mandatory backdoors for the government into these systems?
No.
Why not?
I don't know. My initial response is no. I don't want the government to have a built-in way to access encrypted information from these companies, because then by default it's no longer actually secure because the government can now look at it just without having to do any more work than saying, hey, I'm going to go look at that. So well, I guess it depends on how the backdoor is implemented and whether they need a court order, like an actual court order to get into it, and like how the process becomes more important at that point.
Sure, but I think to a certain extent a backdoor is a backdoor, right? And whether it's only for the government or however it's implemented, that backdoor is still out there.
And someone will find it.
This is the internet, and these are hackers. If there is a backdoor, and especially for something like directly into Microsoft, or directly into Comcast, or Apple, or whoever, these are not like low-value targets. This isn't like someone hacking our website. This would be, there's a lot of...
Hey, I think our website's pretty valuable.
Yes, I know. Thank you. But I think having a door into those things is just rife for, not just espionage government to government, but corporate espionage. Billions of dollars could be made off of knowing what Apple is doing. And sure, it's just iMessage, but if there's a compromise into Apple's system, who knows, right? And so I just think this idea of having a back door that others can access is deeply troubling. They need to be able to respond to warrants, right? And right now, if they can't respond to warrants, they get charged $25,000 a day, which Gray brings up the article is kind of how this exists, but there's still not a mandatory government-accessible backdoor. There just needs to be a way that the companies themselves can give the government that information. So the companies need to be able to decrypt it, even if the government can't. So, yes, there needs to be a way for law enforcement to catch the bad guys. Absolutely. But I think just having the ability for a carte blanche backdoor doesn't make a lot of sense. It's dangerous on too many different levels.
Well, especially when you have, you already have the problem of the Chinese have been accused of trying to take down Google and other such sites. And
they've been caught red-handed hacking those sites without this backdoor existing.
And so if this backdoor existed and they knew it existed, that they would be pushing even harder to hack into these American companies' sites. And then as far as corporate espionage, I mean, you talk about Google. Google has just ridiculous amounts of server power that they could leverage to help crack into any of their competitors.
Right.
And similar things with Facebook and Apple. Apple less so.
Well, I know with iCloud, I mean, their server architecture is now actually, well, it's not great, but it's more robust than it used to be.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, no, theoretically, we trust U.S. companies to not do that kind of thing, right?
Right.
Theoretically, right?
But that doesn't really bear up under the burden of history.
Right. It leaves doors open, and some less scrupulous competitors, whether U.S.-based or not, will be able to jump all over that. And think of what the Apple rumor mill would be like then.
We'd actually know what was going to happen.
We do know what's going to happen. We're going to get to that later in the show. So something did get out from Microsoft's firewalls this week. Windows 8.1. Well, sort of.
Yeah, this Tuesday, Microsoft did announce an important milestone in the life of Windows 8.1. The OS has been released to manufacturers. That's right. But although the RTM is currently available for those manufacturers, we in the consumer market will have to wait until October the 18th to receive the newest update. And Microsoft has said that they will continue to update the release until just before that date. Windows 8.1 is expected to bring more stability to Windows 8, including all the baked-in apps like Photos and News and Stocks and all that stuff, as well as bringing back the Start menu button, which was lacking in Windows 8, which there was a lot of uproar about.
No, it's not a Start menu button. It is
Okay,
just
fine.
this has
It's a button.
No, but this
It's
has
a
been a
button.
point of contention, right? There is a Start-esque button, but it does not launch the old-school Start menu.
Okay, that's fair. It's a Windows button
Yeah.
available on the left-hand side of the taskbar on the desktop
Correct.
that launches you back into the Metro interface.
Correct.
Or the modern
Or-
UI interface.
The modern UI interface, or just the generic list of all apps. You can
Right.
also have it launch into that.
So, I mean, and that's a big point of contention, and a lot of people don't want to upgrade to Windows 8 specifically because it doesn't have that button.
That's
So, Sydney, do we think that this Windows release is as big a deal as it's trumped up to be, or do people just hate Windows 8 that much that they feel they need a hope for something better?
Well, I mean, we're supposedly are going to be seeing a lot of changes, but I don't know. I feel like I have a hard time commenting on this because personally, I don't have huge issues with Windows 8. Now, granted, I'm not generally a person who gets all worked up about OSs because it doesn't bother me. I don't notice. Clearly, I'm just...
Yeah, you were the one of us that was fine with Vista.
Why not?
Oh.
See...
You must have
This
had
is
it
what I'm
running on
saying.
good hardware.
Ish, yeah. Until it cooked itself. It was an
Wow.
HP.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it was good hardware for like 15 minutes, and then it spontaneously combusted.
It was a decent It's kind of like an alpha. It was a decent PC, as decent as a PC could be, very briefly.
I was having a really bad run there. So, yeah.
Well, I still think this is weird that we're doing a release to manufacturer when instead it's just bits. And most people are going to get this as a downloadable update. So I get it, like they want to be able to have hardware that comes out with it at the same time that at the same kind of simultaneously, because this is Microsoft and they like to do it that way. But this is just bits, and the bits are done. Release to manufacturer means it's locked. It's the version that's going to come out, and all they'd have to do is put it up on the Windows Store, and we could have it today. So this is a little ridiculous because it's just bits.
Well, maybe they're just tired of changing things. Like, I feel like this has been our song for Microsoft all year long, is they do something differently, and then people get mad at them for innovating, so maybe they just decided, this is the way this process always works, we have to stick with it this way, because anytime we try to change something, people get mad at us.
Yeah, I mean, what they said is that, so they're going to release it they've already released it to manufacturers, but what they're going to do between now and October the 18th, when they actually release it full-fledged, is come up with small patches to fix any problems that they find with the manufacturer's implementations of the software. So basically, when you go to download Windows 8.1, you'll have 8.1, but then you'll also have
The release patches,
a couple of small release patches to go along with it. And so this is trying to make sure that those release patches really cover those problems. And Paul Thurrott over at Win Supersite, he said that Windows 8.1 will probably be very similar to Windows 3.1 and Windows XP Service Pack 2. The kind of the version of the software that actually worked, that everyone likes.
XP, the one I have the strongest memory of is XP SP2. And yeah,
Oh
I mean
man,
that
Service Pack 2 fixed so many
it
problems.
fixed
with
so many
XP.
things, and it's one of the reasons why XP has been able to stand for over 10 years now.
And Service Pack 2 is like halfway through its life. I mean,
Yeah, it was,
Service Pack 2 took a while coming.
yeah, it was not immediate. It was not, certainly it wasn't just a year after release. But I also think we need to keep in mind that
Yeah, there was a Service Pack 1.
there was a Service Pack 1, and also that Microsoft is changing their model, right? Windows is no longer a boxed software to Microsoft. Windows is a service. And
They still
service,
sell it as a box?
yeah, that's one of the reasons you have to do release to manufacturers. Yeah, you'll probably be able to buy a boxed version. You could buy a boxed version of Windows 8, straight up.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, at the Microsoft store.
Our favorite place.
I do love the Microsoft store. I'm a fan. Actually spend money there, unlike the Apple store.
But by the way, if there is a Microsoft store near you and you have not been, you should go.
should
It's
go.
a
It's-
glorious place.
It is interesting,
It
and
makes you understand Microsoft so much better.
also I think there's more interesting things. You get a wider variety of things than you do at a Apple store. So you get
Yeah,
like
all of the things.
yeah. I hit a point. I think we have to remember, though, that Windows is going to be updated much more often. Next year, there's going to be a Windows 8.2. Or I don't know what they're going to call it, right?
They promised an 18-month development cycle, correct? I think that's correct. So with 8.1 is on track to make that 18-month.
No, I mean, it's not 18 months. It's just straight up a year.
Right. Well, that's what I mean. Like within 18 months.
Yeah.
So that they have constantly updating and trying to stay ahead, like how Apple does OS X every year.
Right. Yeah.
So
So we'll see how like monumental. I think Paul.
I like 8. So I have 8.1 on the Media Center PC, and so I will readily admit that that's not a full-fledged test of the software, but I wasn't going to put it on my laptop. I have to say it works pretty well. I don't even notice the start button because I'm used to it not being there. They took certain things away from Windows 8, and there's a list of them on one of the links that'll be in the show notes. But I can't remember what any of them are offhand. And sometimes you go, wait, why isn't that where I thought it? I thought I just learned where that was. Why did they move it? But I like it. I think it will be a good release. I think that if they can improve the stability, people will start to move more and more to Windows 8.
From Microsoft setting Windows 8.1 free to BlackBerry setting BBM free in more than one way.
Yes. So might BlackBerry Messenger be coming to an iPhone near you?
Woohoo!
Well, according to the Wall Street Journal, BlackBerry is trying to determine if they will spin off BBM as a separate company known as BBM Inc. So if that spin-off were to occur, the journal reports that shortly thereafter, BBM would be expanded to other mobile platforms, specifically iPhone and Android, as was teased by Thorsten Hines, back in May.
Thorsten Hines, yeah, back in May. That was Welsh. Darn it, I lost it. Yeah, Thorsten Hines.
This all appeared... Give me a second.
I broke
This all
him.
appears a thinly veiled attempt to increase the value of BlackBerry after their recent announcement of a special committee to evaluate the possible sale of the company. Most analysts, it appears, do not factor in the value of BBM separately when appraising BlackBerry's value. The Canadian smartphone maker is positioning the service as a competitor for not only cross-platform chat services like WhatsApp, but also to compete with the likes of Twitter and Skype somehow. So Trey,
Yes, Jimmy.
do you think that in the near future we could be video chatting using BBM, or is it just too little too late from the lesser of the two fruit companies?
It is too little, too late from the lesser of the two fruit companies. And it's an issue of branding. BBM is I've never used it, but I am told it's great software.
By people that have Blackberries.
By people that have BlackBerries, like, it's great software. And maybe they'd know. You know, I'm not going to pass judgment on a product I've never used, and I'm not going to say, oh, no, it's not what they claim it is. Let's take as a given that it is actually what it claims to be. Maybe the best messaging program out there.
Well, and it's fairly secure, and that's one of the main advantages
Yep,
of it.
it is
especially
secure.
In this whole
Except in
NSA
India. Except in India, it's secure.
Well, yeah, because they have access to the servers. But
Right,
you know.
because of the terrorist attack. But anyways, it's secure, it's good software. Let's take that for what it is. I think, they're trying to break into an extremely crowded market where people are mostly using the default messaging program for their device, if there is one. And B, BlackBerry doesn't have the name recognition in the key markets for this, right? The key markets, the two biggest markets, are the US and China, right? BBM, BlackBerry, whatever, is a waning, old, looked down upon, deprecated brand in the United States. And as far as I know, isn't really much of a presence in China. So, who cares? It's great software. I'm not going to use it. I don't need it. I'm not using WhatsApp anyways. I'm either using iMessage or text message and a little bit of Facebook Messenger because all of my friends are there. For BBM to be successful, all of your friends need to be there. Or not just, it works great in corporate setting because your whole company's there. And so, of course, you're going to use BBM. Wonderful. But unless your friends are there, it's pointless.
Now, one of the advantages of BBM, I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here because I personally probably would not use the service, is that they're rolling out video chat. That's why they're saying they're going to go after Skype. And it is supposed to be the best messaging app. And I think that BBM, independently of BlackBerry, is well known enough because that's why everyone says they stay with BlackBerry. Physical keyboard, BBM. That's it. Those are the only reasons. So I think BBM by itself might have enough name recognition to at least be somewhat of a player. And then if they are very good, they can claim that market share. But the bigger question is, they were apparently able to port BBM to iPhone and Android 3 years ago. So 3 years ago, when iMessage didn't exist, when Google Voice was still a young, fledgling, app, and when there were no third-party chat things that were worth a damn, they could have totally and completely dominated this market.
But instead, they stuck to their hardware-focused strategy, which clearly is not going to be the future for BlackBerry. I think you're right. I think they missed the boat, and I think at this point it is just too late. It's just too late.
I mean, Sydney, would you buy BBM? What, $10? What do you think?
No.
Is it going to be a paid app? Sorry, is it? Do we know if it's free?
No. It would probably be free. Okay. It would better be free. Otherwise,
it does something. It does something that my phone already does. So I can't imagine.
Sends messages to other phones using a standardized.
Right,
but not using a standardized thing.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. I already have SMS. This is my entire. I already have SMS. Why do I need another thing to send?
Okay.
I don't.
So.
Okay, no, if you have to sit and convince me, if it takes someone sitting and convincing me, then that tells me that it's not going to work.
But okay, so I think we're not necessarily the target market anyway.
No, we're not the target market.
Because we're not using WhatsApp, we're not using Snapchat, or, I guess we're technically the age group for it, or slightly younger than us, but we're not using...
It's younger than us. It's those that are in college.
I had a colleague, older than you, in Paraguay, who was using Snapchat with all of her similarly aged 25-year-old friends. Now, I think she is somewhat of an outlier, but
oh yes,
to take that for what it's worth.
There are those using it.
There are those using it, but we're not. And in the world of, I've just spec'd out a new plan on AT&T. The only thing that really exists on AT&T is unlimited text messaging now. And so, since text messaging is unlimited, I don't really see a need for all of these other app alternatives. That made sense because all the kids are texting, the average teenager is spending 3,000 text messages a month or something, which is what I was doing.
You had to pay per text.
I know, and I was doing 3,000 messages in those days. So I'm a text message pioneer.
I'm glad I didn't get your phone bill.
Yeah, no, it was bad. It was
10 cents.
It was 10 cents a message, and I was doing.
Bless you, Tom Comstock.
I was
Bless
doing.
you,
Oh
Tom
God,
Comstock.
he wanted to kill me. For good reason.
Among men.
And I did that 2 or 3 times, and it was just. But back in those days, back in my day, 10 years ago, that was totally shocking. Who does? Why would you want to do 3,000 text messages a day? I was a pioneer.
Even 7 years ago, people, when it was still. That was everyone was using text messaging, so everyone was in that 400 to 1,000 texts a month kind of range.
Yeah.
And it was still unlimited plans were mostly unknown, and everyone was paying by the message.
Right, but now with basically all you can get is unlimited text, someone write in who uses these services and explain to me its true benefit over text messaging, because text messaging is a standard. You are not behind any kind of walled garden. It just piggybacks off the caller ID system and sends a 160 character message. Like, that's all it does.
Well, and MMS isn't a standard either, by the way.
Right, because there's still issues with it and Google Voice.
Which, screw you all that use iMessage to send me things.
Yeah, but
it works in strange ways.
Yeah. But from a company of the past to the transportation of the future, self-driving cars had a big week.
Yes, indeed. So if you've been with us for a while and you have a pretty good memory, then you may remember way back in the early days of Tech's Last Call on our predictions show, I predicted something somewhat outlandish when I said
Crazy!
Yeah, well, you got to have at least one crazy one. So my prediction was that we would be seeing self-driving taxis in Las Vegas this year. So I will admit, it now being September, that it does look like my prediction might not make it by December. But I'd like to think that I'm not so much wrong as I am ahead of the curve, because rumor has it, our favorite thing, the rumor mill is churning, rumor has it that Google...
Is it people familiar with the matter?
It is people familiar with the matter. According to people familiar with the matter, Google is thinking along the same lines that I am. So our dear friends Sergey, Larry, and all their pals have, according to people familiar with the matter, have been in talks with automobile component manufacturers, so the people who make the bits and then send them to the people who actually make the cars, basically with the goal of creating an entirely Google-designed self-driving car. So basically the idea is that Google's kind of fed up with working with car manufacturers, so they're looking to make something that's Google from the ground up. But, still interested in partnering with those car manufacturers. They've been talking about making something for the individual market, but then also talking about robo-taxis, which
is this like RoboCop?
Yes, RoboCop will chase you down in a robo-taxi if you are speeding in your robo-taxi. Now, obviously, since this is coming from our friends, people familiar with the matter, it is still somewhat speculative. So I don't think that they're going to get their Google Cab out in time for my prediction to be correct. But on the somewhat less speculative end of the self-driving vehicle spectrum, Nissan announced last Monday that, quote, "We will be able to bring multiple affordable, fully autonomous vehicles to the market by 2020. So again, not going to make it by the end of the year, but still.
Just long enough for my children to go to high school.
Yes, indeed. So, Jimmy, what do you think? Are self-driving cars pretty much a guarantee on their way, or are they going to turn out to be the decade's largest vaporware?
So, I think that self-driving cars are on the way, but not necessarily coming out fully baked, as in, look, this is... You go from your normal car that isn't smart at all to a self-driving car. I think because based on what Trey and I saw at CES at the beginning of the year from Audi and from Toyota, they're really stressing that you're still in control. You can still drive this car. There are just certain elements that are really boring, like stop-and-go traffic, where you can engage some sort of, autopilot.
Well, and that kind of seems to be where the breakdown is between what Google is aiming for and what most car companies are aiming for, because there's a very similar message out of, I think it was Mercedes, where they're saying, we want to automate all the boring parts of driving, but we don't want to do that to the fun parts of driving. Whereas Google is like, no, this is awesome. We need cars that totally drive themselves and, RoboCab.
I think what we're going to end up with is both. Something that is capable of just always driving itself.
Okay, that's true.
Very much like the higher end aircraft that can actually take off and land themselves. Generally, for safety regulations, you don't have them do that, but they're capable of it. They have the processing power. They have the sensors. Blah blah blah. And so, I think it's gonna be something like that. These cars will be able to, at all times, be autonomous. There will be no task they can't do on their own. However, when you're up in the winding roads, north of San Francisco or, in Romania on the greatest stretch of road in the world, you'll be able to drive it yourself.
Or
and
the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Or the Blue Ridge Mountains, even though you're technically limited to a speed limit of like 35.
Just drive at night.
Just drive at night.
So you can have high-speed encounters with deer.
Yep, exactly. High-speed deer hitting. It's like cow
It's a
tipping.
new sport.
But no, I think there needs to be that it can do both, because sometimes driving is fun. Well, I love driving, and so I'll always be looking for a car with a mode that lets me drive it sometimes.
Well, but there are people that at no point is driving fun, where
Sure.
they use driving to get from home to work, and that's it. And so, like Sydney, for example. And so I think that there is both will exist independently of each other.
Sure.
But
I don't
that
think
we'll still have to go through this. People getting used to the idea of having a car that will drive itself, that they can still sit there and control. Because, I mean, I can't think of my grandmother wanting a car that would drive itself, that she couldn't at some point intervene in, or even, my parents. I couldn't see them wanting that. So I think it will have to be training people to be comfortable having a car drive them around, such that it's just second nature.
Yeah, there will be a level of comfort, and we're seeing kind of the slow process already, right? A lot of car manufacturers are doing crash imminent braking. I don't know who.
Everyone is doing that at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they're doing active.
Where they have the radar at the front that.
What's basically, it's really easy to do if you already have laser guided cruise control. All you have to do is reprogram that with a couple other sensors, and you have that capacity. So you already have laser cruise that will let you, set the distance, not just the speed. So, we have cars that parallel park themselves. We're slowly seeing the, yaw braking to prevent lane departure, all kinds of things. Like, there's already a lot of these self-driving technologies, and that's a lot of what Audi was pointing out at CES, was, look.
Well, and Toyota was as well.
No, but Toyota was still like the
And their Lexus stuff.
the huge rig of stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
But like Audi was basically like, one of their key messages was, look, so much of the stuff's already in our cars. Mm-hmm. It would almost be trivial to implement this mode. In fact, we already have, and if you're a special journalist, which we were not, you can go ride in the autonomous A6.
Yeah, there are only a few people that were able to do that.
It was a real special group.
I think you're special, guys.
Thanks, honey.
Why, thank you.
So I look forward especially to the cabs. Because the idea of not having to fight crosstown traffic is amazing. I'll pay for that. Heck yes.
And not having to talk to the cabbie while you're doing it.
Well, I don't know. I think this is the place where the robots can win, and I'm okay with it.
Well, but there is an argument that public transportation, if it was optimized to a certain point, would help to cover some of that. Not all of it, obviously, but that with a better network of public transportation, you can address some of those same problems.
Yes, but this is...
And that's a discussion for another show.
This is somewhat of a separate issue, but like that's still, that's going to work great in the Northeast and out West, but in southern cities, are you going to see that investment?
We have a light rail.
Yeah, so there's... And Atlanta has...
One of them.
And Atlanta has MARTA, but I never use it because it's never going the places I want to go in any more efficient manner, and usually I have to drive to a MARTA station. And if I'm already driving to a MARTA station, forget about it. But from self-driving cars, maybe in the far future. But Apple rumors are here with us now in a big way. As we get closer to Apple's still rumored, but confirmed by multiple sources, September 10th iPhone announcement, rumors are piling on rumors. A site called Timo News.
Rumor?
Yes. A site called Timo.
Rumor.
Yes.
It's so bright.
So bright. So intense. So Timo News, a T-Mobile rumors site. Now there's a depressing job. A T-Mobile's rumors site has reported that T-Mobile employees have had have a vacation blackout dates for September 20th through September 22nd. This means they can't take time off. That basically T-Mobile wants to be able to have all hands on deck for that 3-day window. This is usually a sign that the iPhone will be released that weekend, as they will need all hands on deck to cover that launch. The only other phone that's kind of supposed to come out in that period is the Galaxy Note 3, which probably kind of a cool phone, is not going to have this kind of draw. So this is also in line with what Apple did last year, almost exactly. They announced on like September 12th, and they released on like September 22nd. This year, September 10th, released September 20th. This lines up. And we now also are getting a sense of what it's going to be on the inside of this phone. Clayton Morris of Fox News tweeted that the iPhone 5S will include Apple's A7 processor. Big news! New year, new processor from Apple! And guess what? It's faster! In fact,
Didn't want to make
And
a
they're
slower
probably not-
processor.
They're probably not changing the outside, and they're changing the processor and the camera.
yeah, no
I've never
way.
heard them doing this before.
Right. So he threw out the meaningless statistic that it's 31% faster than the A6.
Isn't that what they always claim?
Right, yeah, it's roughly 30.
It's between 30 and 50% faster.
And guess what? It's a better processor. Like, I have no doubt. There is actually an interesting fact in here, though.
Fact?
Well, a rumor, but at least a rumor with some meat
A
to
rumored
it.
fact.
A rumored fact. 9 to 5 Mac fleshed this out by saying the processor would be Apple's first 64-bit mobile processor. All the other Apple mobile processors, the A series, have been 32-bit processors up until now. Now, that's super technical, but this will allow it to handle even more heavy-duty applications. So it's good. I mean,
And more RAM.
and be able to work with its RAM better. Yes. So this is, well, that's actually part of why it can handle the more heavy-duty
Yes,
things. So that's actually interesting. Yeah, it'll be 31% faster, but it will be a 64-bit processor. That's at least newsworthy. So for once, this all sounds plausible. How would you rate your excitement for the iPhone 5S on, let's say a scale from 1 to 5S? Jimmy, what's your excitement rating on a scale of 1 to 5S?
Between don't care and don't give a flying F, I'm going to go with don't give a flying F.
So that we would call that a 1, perhaps.
That's a -1,
A
actually.
-1, okay. Sydney, on a scale of 1 to 5S, how excited are you about the new iPhone?
Slightly higher than Jimmy, maybe?
And
Okay.
they're coming out with a 5C, too.
See, okay. That's the
it's
one I'm so excited.
phones. I don't care about phones.
I'm
I
an
just
Android
want it
person.
to work.
I don't need an iPhone.
I
I'm curious.
yeah.
I will say that. I'm curious. I'm just not excited. That there's
I
a
don't get
difference.
excited about phones.
I think at this point we know what this phone's going to be. We don't know what the megapixels are going to be on the camera, but that's about
It'll
it.
be the Sony
Whatever-
13. Was it the 13?
It's a 13 or a 15. It's an odd number. But whatever Sony's newest high-end mobile sensor is, that's what this will be. 'Cause
I
that's
think
what
it'll be the third. It's the one that's in the Z. It'll be that one.
Okay. So, so we even know...
I will put money on that.
Well, that's what it
it's
always...
supposed to be.
Great. Easy bet. That's what it always is.
Well, I think they announced one very recently. That's a 16, but I think that's so recent that
Well-
in order for it to have been in manufacturing, that they couldn't have made that deadline.
We'll see. I hope it's a 16.
I think first quarter of next year, where the rumor is that there will be an iPhone 6. That's when that.
Right. You'll get the 16 megapixel. You'll get the 4.5-inch display. Blah,
It'll
blah,
just
blah.
be the iPhone that everyone wants.
Look, I can predict the day one news out of this phone release to a T. Okay.
They didn't change it.
It will be. It doesn't seem different enough. The processor's better, but really, come on, Apple, give us a new phone. But it's going to sell okay. And that's going to be the day one news. What I want to see is the staying power that this has in the marketplace, given that they're not changing the display rumored until the spring, but I somehow doubt that given everything else. I don't know if Apple can keep putting out small screen phones and continue to sell them. I'm not going to be buying, probably, unless it really blows me away with something crazy, I'm not going to be buying a 5S. I just bought a Lumia 1020. We are going to be upgrading Sydney's phone to the 5C, that still is rumored. But so you'll have at least some coverage of the new iPhone. But the more interesting one to me is what are they going to do with the C?
Yeah, no, the C will be a more interesting phone. But I think that as far as the 5S, I think that the 64-bit mobile processor is interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, as far as I'm aware, I don't know of any other 64-bit mobile processors right now.
I don't know
Now,
what the latest of the Exynos is. I just don't know.
Yeah, that's not something that's normally advertised about
Right.
them. But I think that could be interesting in the effect it has on battery life. And so if they're able to improve battery life significantly while making, let's predict, the phone will be maybe a little bit lighter,
Maybe.
maybe like fractionally lighter.
Though it's hard to get lighter than the iPhone 5. Like that is.
Yeah, and we can also argue whether or not you want to make
Right.
it lighter than the
I mean, it's
iPhone
almost
5.
frighteningly light. It stops feeling like a premium product. And we've talked about this in the show before, I think.
But yeah, I think that could be interesting with the additional battery life. I know that that's something that people are really pushing for. So I don't know. I am interested, or I'm curious. I'm just not excited.
Something that people haven't really been pushing for, but is coming anyways, is this week's
Whether
gadget.
you want it or not.
What do you get when you take a 3DS and subtract the 3D? No, not just an S,
Oh, darn.
but a 2DS. Yes,
Track 1D.
yes. Nintendo announced a new handheld gaming system, the 2DS. It will run all of the 3DS library, but not in 3D. It does not have a 3D display. It is just a normal 2D screen, but it will play all of the 3DS games. Also, just like the 3DS, it will run the entire back catalog of Nintendo DS games. It's also $40 cheaper than the base 3DS at $130. It ditches the clamshell design for a kind of flat wedge shape that people compared to a doorstop with a screen on it. It's more
That's what it
tablet.
looks like.
It's more tablet-like, less
It's
hinge.
like the Sony Tablet
Yeah,
S.
yeah, Tablet S, yeah. And will launch alongside Pokemon X and Y on October 12th. Also, in other Nintendo news, Wii U got a price drop and an epic bundle. They got rid of the basic version of the Wii U that used to retail for $300 and replaced it at $300 with the deluxe 32GB model bundled with a copy of Wind Waker HD, the HD remake of the Game of the Year winning Zelda game, which was a game you were going to buy anyways. So really, you're getting the console for $240 and a game you actually want for the normal $60. So, are things looking up for the Mario Maker?
Poor Nintendo. No.
Why not?
I don't think that this 2DS. I understand what their goal with the 2DS is. Okay, so for $130, you can give this device to a kid. They're not going to break it, probably. Thing's built like a tank, most likely.
Yeah.
If it's built like, all the other Game Boys before they went to the dual screen, or what was it, the Nintendo Advance, Game Boy Advance?
Game Boy Advanced SP was the
okay,
first
yeah.
hinged device.
When they went to that whole hinge thing was, never thought that was a good idea.
A bit dodgy.
But all of them before that were built like tanks. It was very difficult to break them. You're more likely to lose the cartridge when you dropped it than break it.
Right.
So I think that is a good thing for the 2DS. I just don't think that if they're selling those games for what they've always been selling them
$40.
which is $40, I don't think you can compete in a market where you still have a $200 iPod Touch if the kid's over the age of 8.
Sure, but there are also millions of children under the age of 8. And so we can debate whether it's 8 or 10, but that kind of middle of elementary school, right? Let's call
Right.
it 3rd, 4th grade. It's kind of to me, the upper mark for this device. But it is seemingly a somewhat great device for that age group. No Gorilla Glass. None. Okay? The thing's not going to shatter. It's made of plastic, which normally I deprecate, I get. But in this kind of kid-focused device, Fisher-Price...
That's what you actually want.
That's what you actually want. Probably throw it against a wall, whatever. I wish we had an extra $130 in the budget and we could torture test this thing, because I bet it would be hilarious.
I might have my Game Boy Pocket. We could buy one and torture test them side by side.
Yeah. So, I mean, this could be a truly epic torture test of a device. So I think there's a purpose, and parents are price sensitive, especially if you have like 2 kids that you've got to buy game systems for. So you have the average 2.2 children, and they both want game systems. $140 versus $130 versus 170 is real money. That's real money saved.
Well, that's a game.
And I think they're very strategic about that, right? You can buy the Nintendo 2DS and Pokemon X or Y for the same price for which you could buy just the 3DS, and the 3DS has no pack-in game.
As an aside, how many freaking Pokemon games are there? It's just
one every
A
2
lot.
years for the past since '98. It's a ton.
okay, a lot.
I mean, I started playing Pokemon Blue when it was released in the U.S. in like '98 or '99.
Right.
I was very early in middle school.
And then Red came out shortly
Well,
thereafter.
I mean, Blue and Red released together, and then Yellow came shortly after that.
Oh, that was right.
And Yellow was really just like the one that related more to the television show. And I actually played
Right.
both Blue and Yellow. And then there was
Yeah, I
Gold
played
and
Blue, Yellow, and Red.
I didn't. My brother had Red. I had Blue. This is very interesting for everyone at home. I know. And then there was Silver and Gold, which were the ones that kind of came out with the Game Boy Color. And then I lose track.
Was it
A
the
lot.
Color, or was it the Game Boy Advance that those came out with?
No,
I think
no.
that
Those
was
came.
the Advance.
Those were straight up Game Boy games that were released.
Really?
Yeah, I had them, and I had a Game Boy Color, and
Yeah.
I didn't have a Game Boy Advance. It was Emerald. I had Pokemon Emerald for the Game Boy Advance, but that was
Oh, okay.
And then there was kind of the Black and White series for the DS, and then for the DS, and now this is the new series for the whatever this is, the 3DS and 2DS.
the 2DS.
And we've missed some
3
in
and
there.
2DS.
Please, good Lord, write us in and tell us all of the Pokemon games.
Oh my
Isn't there
God.
one called Pearl, or did I
Yes,
make
there
that
is.
up?
There's
Wikipedia
Pearl.
on this. I'm just going to
Win.
look this up.
But, so, the price makes sense. It makes sense that it's more durable. But Tom McShay over at GameSpot pointed out something that I think is worth considering. Most of the time, Nintendo does periodically update their hardware. But they never give up on the fundamental idea of that hardware, right? They never, as he points out, they never released a DS with one screen. Or a Wii that didn't need a Wiimote. Or a Wii U that doesn't need a gamepad. There's kind of always a fundamental hardware conceit behind a Nintendo system. They didn't release a non-handheld Game Boy. But the 3D-ness was the fundamental gimmick, or the fundamental idea behind the 3DS. And to release one without that just seems very un-Nintendo to give up on what is innovative about that hardware. Because without that, it's just a processor and screen rev on the DS.
So you're saying they pulled a Microsoft?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, with unbundling the Kinect from the Xbox One.
But they haven't unbundled the Kinect from the
Let me
Xbox
rephrase
One.
that. They've made
Dropped
it
the
so-
requirement.
Yeah, they've dropped the requirement for the Kinect on the Xbox One.
Yeah, I think they've done it more so. The Xbox One is not just about Kinect. The key selling point of the 3DS, and honest to God, why I own one today, is
that
because
it's 3D.
Because it's 3D, and they came out in Japan before it came out in the U.S. And the guy at my local GameStop had one, and I played with it for like 10 minutes, and I was playing like Nintendogs or something crappy. But that being able to have that game in my hand and the glassless 3D, I pre-ordered it there on the spot because of the effect of the 3D. And to totally back away from that, I agree with Tom McShay, does seem a little strange and very un-Nintendo.
Well, but that's assuming that every system that they put out forever from now on ad infinitum is going to have to be 3D.
No.
I mean, what? No, that's you're saying. It's not like the 2DS is a 3DS without 3D. It's just a different device. So
No, but
I think that's a little unfair to say, oh, they didn't put 3D in this one. Well, are you expecting them to put 3D in everything from now
No, but
on?
this is in the 3DS family. They pitch it as being part of the 3DS family of devices.
Because it takes the same games, though.
Right. It takes the same games. And so, like, it's backwards compatible with the DS, which they usually do that because it's Nintendo and they play to children. But this is considered part of the 3DS family of devices. And so you have one member in the family, or not, why, Call it something else. Call it the Nintendo Pad.
Yeah, they should have called it something else. I can agree with that.
But they're pitching this as part of the 3DS family. If they had said, oh, it'll play these new type of games, these casual App Store games. Here's what this should have been. Okay? What this should have been is a tablet without 3D that has a Apple-style App Store with very cheap casual games that also will take 3DS and DS carts made of solid plastic, same build quality as it is now. That's what this should have been.
So you want a Nintendo Vita, because that's basically what you just described.
No, but I want it backwards compatible with the other stuff, which the Vita isn't. Is only backwards compatible through kind of downloadable content.
Right. No. Okay, fine. You want a combination of a Vita and a PSP.
Yes. Yeah.
But because the Vita has that app store and has those things where you can get the casual games, but then it also supports the ability to have the new games that are the cartridges and all of those things.
Right, and it's actually doing really well in the indie space. A lot of indie games are coming to the Vita, and it's turning into this great, like, be able to play indie games that are less expensive on the go. Like, it's turning into a cool thing. But yeah, that's basically what I want, because I think the Vita has a better strategy than the 2DS.
And then you release it for what? I mean, what? $150? $200?
It's the same hardware. You release it for the same price. You can do exactly what I've described with that hardware. And the hardware is what cost. You release it for $130. And call it whatever you want to call it. Because this key point about this device, that's not actually two screens. It's actually one screen that's cordoned off in weird ways to duplicate the 3DS. But it's actually one screen under the plastic there. So you take that plastic fascia off, and now you have a tablet that you pitch as a
I see what you're
small
saying.
handheld tablet, release it for the same price. Yeah, that's what you do. That's what they should have done. Problem solved.
What does the back of this thing look like?
It's kind of ugly. One other point I want to make, and then we'll move on to Geeks Anonymous, is I think part of the issue is Nintendo wants to make money on each device they sell. So that's why they pulled the 3D effect out, which costs money, and released an $130 device. What they should have done is released a $130 device that also had 3D, and then we could just talk about how this thing is kind of ugly looking, and not they have given up on something important.
And it looks like a doorstop, which is exactly how I would use it when its batteries died.
Well, not everybody likes 3D.
Right, not everyone likes 3D, but you can turn it on.
parallax
Especially if
doesn't
you're
work
telling me that
perfectly.
this is supposed to be marketed towards small children.
Yeah.
I can totally see not wanting to mess up your small child's
Though
Brain.
brain and
optometrists have repeatedly stated there's no evidence of an actual effect on children, negative effect on children of using 3D.
yeah, as far as your eyes. But what about neurologically?
Well, yeah, that we don't know.
There you go.
But you can turn it off, but that's an easy parental setting, right? Go in parental settings. 3D can't be turned on. Done. So like there are ways around that makes this still a more broad spectrum device. But speaking of things geared now more towards children, it's this week's Geeks Anonymous.
Last night, Darth Vader came down from planet Vulcan and
Was, without doubt, the worst episode ever.
I think we should call it your grave.
curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal.
So I think by this point in the podcast, episode 39? We've pretty much established ourselves as fairly nerdy people.
I'm not sure I know what you're talking about, Sydney.
Okay, so maybe
My
it's just
glasses
me.
back up on my nose.
So we have quite an assortment of degrees among the three of us, and I would rate us all as being highly literate.
I'm an engineer. No.
Okay, so Trey and I are highly literate, and Jimmy's an engineer. Well, now it is time. I'm going to put the two of you on the spot as we review a list of new words that have recently been added to the Oxford Dictionaries online. So are you ready to play our game today, gentlemen?
Yes,
What
absolutely.
could possibly go wrong?
Okay, so I'm gonna read you one of the words, and you just do your best to define said word. So we'll start with you, Jimmy. Jimmy, your word is dappy. Dappy. Dappy.
Is that like a hairdo?
It is not a hairdo. I would let Trey steal, except we've already discussed this word. Any other guesses for dappy? Oh, I will tell you dappy is an adjective.
Can you use it in a sentence?
Man, that girl was dappy.
I'm going to go with dumb.
Pretty close.
Close.
So according to the Oxford Dictionaries Online, dappy, this is not one I'd heard of, means silly, disorganized, or lacking concentration. So pretty close.
It's like doofy.
Yeah, doofy,
Man,
dappy.
Darwin is
what I would
dappy.
say is we already have a word for that. It's dopey, folks.
Yes.
But okay, all right, let's see. Let me find one that I didn't give Trey earlier for Trey. All right, this is my new favorite word. Omnishambles.
Omnishambles?
Omnishambles.
This is like a shambles, but in all directions? which is technically what that, like, a shamble, being a shambles in many directions at once, an omni-shambles.
Yeah, that's pretty close. So a situation that has been comprehensively mismanaged, characterized by a string of blunders and miscalculations. An omnishambles.
So it's this generation's FUBAR.
right.
And
Yeah.
cluster F.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that new word. So those are some of the ones that you all probably wouldn't guess. Now, some of the other words are things that are going to sound more familiar. Baby moon is on the list of new
Nope,
words.
don't know what that one is either.
Baby. Oh, Jimmy, you are so out of touch.
That's where you go on a trip before you have a kid, similar to a honeymoon, except it's right before you give birth, so it's a baby moon.
Yep. Baby moon, buzzworthy. Bitcoin, as we should all be familiar with in the tech sphere. Derp,
Okay.
a good one.
Good meme.
Digital detox, another important one.
Is that like where you delete your Facebook?
Yeah, well, it's
you're,
not.
like,
I
feeling
don't think necessarily
antisocial and-
long term. Like people who go camping for a few days and don't take their cell phone. That would be an example.
Getting
of,
away from it all.
of a digital detox. Food baby. That's another one of my
Wait,
favorites.
wait. Let's go back. We need a word for digital detox.
Well,
Like,
it's two words. It's a phrase. Digital detox.
people used to just call that camping.
Yes. A period of time
I
during
don't
which a person
understand.
refrains from using electronic devices such as smartphones or computers, regarded as an opportunity to reduce stress or focus on social interaction in the physical world.
Once again, we need a phrase for that.
We have a phrase for that. Yes. Geek
God.
chic also made the list.
Okay.
Food baby. Let's not skip food baby. Geek chic. Guac, apparently as separate from guacamole. Jorts, another good one. Internet of Things.
Okay, yeah, and that's been big
Okay,
this
yeah.
year.
Pixie cut, pixie
Oh,
cut, like
okay.
the haircut. And then some other good ones. Space tourism. So a lot of these are things that we've had on the show. Selfie. Jimmy, do you know what a selfie is?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I took a bunch of selfies.
I too have been on Facebook in the last 3 years.
That is an excellent use of the word selfie and the word totes in a sentence, Trey. I'm so impressed. Totes.
Anytime. I've got this down.
No appalls necessary for that one.
That's one that got added too that I can't stand.
Appalls.
Like
Paul's?
apologies.
Like
Oh,
appalls.
wow.
I'm not totes adorbed today because I had a bad night. So
Yeah.
We
appalls.
should really not put these in the
Seriously.
dictionary.
Well, here's the thing. It's not like they're going in the Oxford English Dictionary itself. This is, the Oxford Dictionaries online, which is more of a flexible kind of format. The other one that made the list is twerk, which just should be completely purged from the collective culture and consciousness anyway. But so having run down the list of at least a few of these charming new entries, guys, how do we feel about putting these things in the dictionary? Does it make you want to squee?
Which also got added.
Veronica Belmont will be so happy about that.
Yes. I spent the summer in Paraguay with a linguist was on the team, and we would often talk about this, but like languages evolve and change. And we hear slang from the 1940s, and they either just become not even slang words or just words, or they just sound super foreign. And so some of these will stay in our culture, and some of these, 10 years from now will go, oh, remember that word? That seems really foreign. And then,
Hopefully it'll go die.
well, no, but then the people who ironically relive the 20 teens will like start using the words the way the people who ironically relived the 60s and 70s started using like funky and groovy again. It's going to be like that. They'll come back.
Chandelier earring.
Then they'll be wearing their chandelier earrings, and they'll be talking about how they totally want to squee.
No,
and
they totes want to
totes
squee.
want to squee.
Totes want to squee.
And we'll look at them and go, look, I lived through that trend the first time. Just stop.
Yeah, from this I
it
feel
was
like
bad the first time.
yeah, you need to refer back to advice that Stacey and Clinton gave frequently on what not to wear.
Yeah.
That's if you did the trend the first time, you can't do it when it comes back again.
Great.
Applies to fashion, should also apply to language.
That means I don't have to relive the early 90s. Thank God.
Which is why leggings just...
And you also don't have to talk about how you have a MySpace and everyone visits it.
Yeah, I never was really involved in the MySpace thing. But on a completely different
MySpace.
note, if you really like video games, you're going to stick around for this week's Last Call.
So have you ever wished that you had the power of mind control over other people?
I do.
Yeah, of course you do.
I do. I wonder, no. Marvel, yes.
So researchers at the University of Washington have demonstrated what is believed to be the first human-to-human brain interface. The procedure was a professor, I'm going to totally butcher this, Rajesh Rao, sat
Sure,
on
not
one
bad.
side of campus and was playing a computer game that required shooting down enemy planes. However, the control for firing the cannon rested in the hands of Andrea Stocco,
Stoco, probably.
who could not see the game and was located on the other side of campus. Now, Rao imagined pressing the spacebar with his right hand, and Stocco's right hand executed the movement, which was compared to an involuntary twitch. So, Trey, is this the only way that we can get you to play a first-person shooter without becoming physically ill?
Yes, because I could sit there, close my eyes, and someone else could just do the work. Sounds great. That's exactly what I want, because Lord knows I can't play them.
You could be the button pusher.
I could be the button pusher. I have great Twitch reactions, but this is great. This solves a fundamental problem that I've been worried about.
Yeah, and they also used like technology. It's not like they used new technology for actually reading brainwaves or applying a electronic stimulus. That there was no open brain surgery. This was all.
Oh wow!
It was an EEG was what they used to read
Sure.
the brainwaves, and it was a T. Okay, I'm gonna let's see. This is an article over on The Verge, by the way. It was a transcranial magnetic stimulation,
Is that
or
the thing
TMS.
that looks like the thing in a Star Wars?
It's shown with a purple cap.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
He's wearing a cap.
I think this is cool, and this clearly has like other practical applications, but I like that they started with video games.
Of course, my first thought, as usual with these types of things, goes to adaptive technology. And, someone who does not have physical usage of hands or whatever, and, being able to essentially communicate through someone else. Just awesome.
Or
So
someone.
when is Stephen Hawking going to get this integrated into his wheelchair?
Well, but
It would be
Stephen
another-
Hawking
it would be
can
another
control
person.
his own communication device.
Right, but if you think about it, if you take this to its logical extent, Stephen Hawking could then control the voice of someone else. So rather having to go through the extremely labor-intensive process of using his communication device, which is really difficult, someone could put the cap on, he put his cap on, and he essentially
You mean someone else would put his cap on?
Right. Someone else put this cap on, he would essentially possess their brain and speak for them.
I
And
can
you-
see no possible problems with
Project
this.
his brain.
Well, yeah, whatever
Use
you want.
the neural firings of his brain to control the
control their
reactions
voice.
of the other person's body.
Yeah, exactly. And speak through another person. Now, obviously, the technology isn't anywhere near that yet. But that's where it's going, I think.
I think that this is going to be awesome and terrifying when it finally comes to And it also shows that we're learning more about the brain, which is important because we don't know nearly as much as we should.
Right. And that brings us to the end of another show. Thank you so much for joining us for this extremely late edition of Tech's Last Call.
It's our Labor Day special.
It's our Labor Day
Holiday
special.
edition.
If you have any feedback, as ever, podcast at techstlastcall.com, pinterest.com/techstlastcall, facebook.com/techstlastcall, or at techstlastcall on the Twitters. However you find us, we'll be seeing you on the interwebs.